at the energy sector in general, oil traded between 90 and $94 a barrel forever. And then all of a sudden it trades 26.50 a barrel one day. And everybody goes, I didn't see that coming, because everybody bought the break all the way down. And now oil's trading around that $45 a barrel. So we have seen that through this period of uncertain times, or uncertain times within the Fed.
But we haven't seen it into the metals. We haven't seen this if you're concerned about, for example, global crises. And we see a little bit when we see the, a dust up with the North Koreans or all of it. There's a brief run up, then it runs down. But what do you think's going on there, or beneath the scene? Is there something that we're missing?
Well, I think that's really interesting that, what you raised, especially with the metals, because if you look at the price of gold today, just around $1,200 an ounce. And if you look at back in the early 80s, it was trading around $800 an ounce. So if you adjust for inflation, you should have gold somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 an ounce, but we don't. And then you look at what's gone on in the world, and it should probably be at $5,000 or $6,000 an ounce, but it's not. So the reason is, I think a lot of us have become so jaded, and whatever happens in the world, it's like yesterday's newspaper in 5 minutes. So people are dismissing some of these events to a point where one day you won't be able to dismiss them, and you'll see a huge move in some of these precious metals and other products.
I know you and I are sounding like the Cocoon Club here, but I think a lot of young investors, they don't remember that a lot of this stuff that historically we have, resisted of late, but you haven't resisted, the simple fact that markets do go up and they do adjust, and they obviously do change.
The filings made by CME Group, which operates all the major futures exchanges in the United States, these filings with the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission show that CME Group has been offering volume trading discounts to governments and central banks for their secret trading of all futures contracts in the United States. It's a, official government filing that governments and central banks are secretly trading the futures markets in the United States. I think it's remarkable. I've never seen it reported in a mainstream financial news organization, and I've sent the documents probably to most major financial news organizations in the West, trying to get them to inquire about this secret trading by governments and central banks in the futures markets, but they won't do it.
Yeah, and I just saw Grant Williams writing. He writes a newsletter called Things That Make You Go and I guess he had found through the OMFIF that they had admitted that central banks, in the numbers of 30 to 40 central banks, I think, are now actively trading equity markets. So essentially, you have central banks who are running around the world acting like hedge funds now.
Yeah, but the equity market trading is generally known. It's not emphasized, but it does turn up acknowledged in the financial press from time to time. But the secret trading in the futures markets, as far as I can tell, has never been reported.
Mm-hmm. And then this past summer, you had Terry Duffy talking on Fox Business. He's the CME Group chairman and CEO. He was discussing, just hypotheticals of where the gold price should be. He had mentioned prices of $5,000 just based on, news and events, etc. And here we're sitting at, when he said it was $1,220 gold roughly. And so I found that kind of interesting. I'm sure you did it, Gata, as well.
Well, somebody should have asked them, are central banks and governments trading futures in your exchanges markets, but nobody did.
And then you look at what's going on in the world, and it should probably be at $5,000 or $6,000 an ounce. People are dismissing some of these events to a point where one day you won't be able to dismiss them, and you'll see a huge move in some of these precious metals and other products.
I know you and I are sounding like the Cocoon Club here, but I think a lot of young investors, they don't remember that a lot of this stuff that historically we have, resisted of late, but